The Consulting Success podcast is powered by the Clarity Coaching Program. If you'd like to work directly with the Consulting Success team and receive personal coaching and support to optimize and grow your consulting business, marketing, and revenue, visit consultingsuccess.com to find out more and apply.
Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business.
Hey everyone, it's Michael Zapersky, and today I'm here with Andi Simon. Andi, welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here. What fun.
Yes. So I've enjoyed our conversations to this point, Andi, and one of the things that caught my attention early on, I guess probably in our first conversation, was that you are a corporate anthropologist. I want to explore more about that in just a moment. You focus a lot on cultural kind of change. You're a speaker, a podcaster, an author. You have a PhD in anthropology, and you're the CEO of Simon Associates Management Consultants. And you've been running that for 19 years. So by no means is being a consultant new to you. You've been featured in many publications, Forbes, Yahoo, CEO, World Magazine, and others. But let's start off for probably a lot of people. I mean, I certainly wasn't very aware of this or didn't have a clear understanding. What does a corporate anthropologist really mean?
Well, it's interesting because I am an anthropologist, a cultural anthropologist, and I had done most of my research on how people immigrated, adapted, and changed. And most people understand anthropology as studying small-scale societies, how people live their daily life. What don't we understand? What don't they understand? And we're curious. And when I left academics and went into business, I spent 20 years as an executive in financial services and healthcare. When I went to launch my company in 2002, my PR firm said to me, after listening to my story, "You're a corporate anthropologist that helps companies change." And I said, bingo. And so we made it up. And I'm perfectly happy creating a new market space. There are many, many business anthropologists now. It's becoming much more in vogue inside academic organizations to train people. But think about it. What is the difference between a small scale society, Samoa, and a business with many societies within it, or a family firm, which is often one culture and one society in it? These are organizations that use culture the way humans do to create the essence of who they are and to help them live every day in a very similar fashion. So when we work with mergers and acquisitions, which we often do, the clash comes from two different cultures, and they get it really fast that these are small-scale societies coming together. And I've enjoyed the journey for the last almost 20 years, in part because people say, what does an anthropologist do in corporate worlds? I said, we help them see things through a fresh lens. And that's what we would do in a small society.
Yeah, I mean, that's fascinating, Andi. It sounds like these days, so there's a lot more understanding the marketplace of what a corporate anthropologist does, or a business anthropologist, as you called it as well. But when you started almost 2 decades ago, there wasn't a clear understanding, right, of that term. For everyone who is with us right now and is thinking, well, maybe I'm not a corporate anthropologist, but I resonate with that because the work that I do and the area that I focus on is not truly understood by clients. Maybe the problem that I'm solving, clients don't think they're having that problem, but really like that is the core of the problem. So that they're seeing it differently. I'm very interested to know your journey. Like, how did you go about, what were the early stages and steps that you took to educate, to make sure that those that you want to have an impact on understood what a corporate anthropologist was and how you were really suited to support them? Because I think that'll be helpful for others who are maybe facing kind of a similar challenge.
It's very interesting. I'll break that into two phases. On the one hand, when I got into industry, into financial services during deregulation or healthcare during managed care, I was very comfortable when things were not static and certain, but going through change. So if the business environment was going through change, I began to realize how hard it was for people to do and how my job as an executive was to help lead them in some fashion. Sometimes manage them, sometimes tell them, but clearly I needed to understand how to get them to see what was going on and embrace it and change their behavior, which is very difficult. When I launched my company, I picked up clients almost immediately, not because of what I did, but in fact, what they needed to change. So Markel Paper became a client almost overnight. I had Centenary College as a client, Montefiore Medical Center as a client. I worked my network. And I said, I've launched myself as a corporate anthropologist to help companies change. And they said, well, help us change. They didn't ask, what does an anthropologist do? And quite frankly, when I was in industry, in banking, I didn't pull out the doctorate very often. And in healthcare, I could pull it out more often. But I was a different kind of doctor than those other doctors. So you were careful about what brand you were articulating and how that meant something. But when I launched the business, I was bringing a perspective that people needed because they knew they were stuck or stalled. And that wasn't going to be easy if there wasn't some authority, expertise, experience that would provide a fresh perspective. My first book, called On the Brink, A Fresh Lens to Take Your Business to New Heights, has 7 case studies in there of clients, all stuck or stalled, where a little anthropology could help them grow. And that's what the book is about. It's how a little anthropology can do that. But usually I take them out exploring with me. I say, come on, let's be an anthropologist together. Other consultants, you do similar stuff, I'm sure. And you have no idea how fascinating it is. We go inside their clients and we see exactly the same things going on the manufacturing floor or in their offices or watching them use their products. We walk out and we would write down everything we saw and they would see one thing and I would see another. Mm-hmm. And it didn't take long for them to say, you're looking for gaps. That's true. And you're looking to fit the box. And my job is to get you to see opportunities where you could play a role that isn't easily articulated by the client. But if you're an observer, you can step back and see what they can. And as someone who's in the business, it's difficult for you as well. So that's the approach. And I, quite frankly, have become pretty comfortable telling people my job is to help you see, feel, and think in new ways through a fresh lens, because it's all around you, but you can't see it because your mind boxes it.
And I think one thing that you mentioned early on there, Andi, is so key. It's that you did not try and convince or persuade people to see things or like really the focus wasn't on, hey, corporate anthropology, because that's not what they were thinking. You met them where they were, which is they knew that they had an issue or they were interested in navigating change. And so that's what you focus on. This is do very similar kind of or have many conversations with clients who are consultants who are kind of navigating that same issue. And it's often so powerful to say, yes, of course you're an expert in A, but if your client wants C, right? Think about how can you talk about C? How can you make the focus of C? And once you start that conversation, you can get them to see the power of A, but don't try and push A because that's not what somebody wants. And it sounds like that's what you did as well as part of that journey. I'm interested to know what gave you the confidence that you could go from being in academia to translating the success that you had there and the learnings you had there to create a successful consulting business. Was it an experience you had, a conversation? Like, when did you actually know and have the confidence to go out and start your own business?
Oh, it's a great question. The question is, do we ever have confidence? I know we have competence, but I also know that as many times as I've had short and long-term relationships with clients, I'm always very respectful of the value that we play. They're paying us to help them solve problems, a little like a doctor in the emergency room at times. And the confidence comes from the fact that they've tried this or they've tried that. And so my job is to really be humble enough to know that I have a role to play for them. But the confidence, in some ways, I guess I've always been confident that what I brought was a fresh perspective.
But that's what I mean, Andy, like, where did that come from? So when you were in academia, what gave you the confidence, or just like, where did it come from? You say, okay, I'm going to now venture out and start my own consulting business. Where did that happen?
I'm not sure. And it's an interesting question. I grew up in a family firm. We were entrepreneurs. I'm very entrepreneurial. And even going into the world that I did inside academics, I was bridging American studies and anthropology. I'm a gap filler and a bridger. I think part of it is knowing who we are. And then when I launched the company, I just talked to people. And to your question about the confidence, I built my network and I said, can I just talk to you about what I'm doing? You might know someone who needs it. And I was very quiet about selling. I don't think people are going to buy me. They're going to engage me in a problem that they have. And it still goes that way now. I said, let me tell you how I help companies change. And if this works for you, then let's talk about how I can help you. And I think you have a book about this as well. If I keep pushing it into their zone, then the conversation leads to the way in which we approach something, how it might help. It's very much collaboration at the very best. Confidence is an interesting word, though, because after 20 years in this and 10 years in academics and being a visiting professor and all of that, every day it's like, how can I help somebody? And if I can, then I have a pleasant, wonderful gift to give. And I enjoy the journey. It's really cool. When you watch their eyes open up, you must have seen it also, and they go, you don't have to work so hard. They go, that's it. And so the head has an epiphany, and that's the joyful.
I want to bring you back to the actions that you just mentioned that you took early on. And I'm interested to know if you continue to do this to this day, which is to reach out to your network, to let people know what it is that you're doing without the idea of trying to sell, but more just so that they're aware of it. And if they have the need, they can then further engage in conversation, or they may know somebody who does have a need, right? And so let me just kind of break this down in a few parts. Are you still doing that today?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a routine or a habit around that?
Well, yes and no. I've done about 500 workshops and speaking engagements since 2007. From the time I launched in 2002 till about then, I was swamped. I was just very busy. And then I was introduced to Vistage and to tech and to other organizations, and I began to do speaking engagements, workshops, keynotes, all flavors. And I found that was a very healthy way to show people what I could do without selling it. Mm-hmm. And I let them taste it as if it was a cookie. You don't know if you want to buy the box until you taste a little. And so in a 3-hour workshop, it became quite valuable. I did a lot of webinars to use that methodology. I like to share. I use my network very intentionally, and I stay deliberately engaged with them, sending them material, the podcast, new book, a chapter from the new book, something you might find useful for your customers. I'm always thinking about how it will help them do their job. And often it comes back with, you really ought to talk to so-and-so or hear somebody. And then we are content marketers. We're HubSpot folks. And we truly believe in the power of search. I love social media, but I get most of my leads from content marketing.
So I want to break a few of those things down. So it sounds like if we look at kind of more recently, a lot of your business, the lead flow, the impact has been through workshops, webinars, content that you're putting out there. Earlier stages, before you were kind of delivering workshops consistently, that the initial opportunities in your business and clients came from your network. And so you reached out to them. You still do this today, but do you do this, for example, is it like every Tuesday at this time, you send some messages? Is it once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month? Is there any kind of cadence or routine to when you reach out to people?
No. And there's no cadence or routine to my life. That is not my strength. If that's supposed to be a strength, it's not a weakness either. But I also have a staff person who handles a good deal of that content creation, the circulation, and working my emails systematically. And my podcasts, I do 1 day a month. That's pretty rigorous. And then I have more than enough right now for 3 to 4 months. But I like that rigor because I have somebody who manages it for me. But I have staff in the support roles, and they allow me to then create the material, and they end up moving it out. But there are some key people. There's one gentleman, and we saw him 2 weeks ago for the first time post-pandemic. And we were talking about our experience together. And from the day I launched my company, that he's brought me 3 or 4 clients. And I've tried to bring him as well. And they understand what I can do and how to bring us the right match. And I understand for him as well. But I've been blessed. I think that the mix of things I've done and thinking about it outside in, not what I do, but what they need, has led me to a steady stream of very cool clients. One client I'm working with for 3 years now, I met him at a conference where I talked about culture change. And he was in the audience and he said, "Can we have drinks?" And next thing you know, I was doing a 2-day retreat. And then it turned into a full year. And now it's another year. And that's expanded. And those are the kind of clients that I can't work hard enough for.
While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early stage consultants,
and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th, you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months, so don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. For those who are going, yeah, this all makes sense. I'd love to do more workshops, more webinars, get in front of more clients. Obviously, there's the power of leverage. I talk a lot about how it can take a while to build up like your own brand. And if you don't have a lot of traffic coming to your website, you can do social, but to find organizations, professional associations, and so forth that already have access to your ideal clients, this is a great channel. And you've obviously done a really fantastic job of that. What advice would you offer to people if someone right now has expertise, they're good at what they do, but they haven't done a lot of speaking or many webinars or written articles for other sources of information like professional associations or groups? What advice would you offer them to begin reaching out or to build those relationships or to land those kinds of opportunities?
So I'll break that also into boxes. Let's start with the easy part. What are the keywords that you want to be found for? Remember, what Google has done is made content marketing the marketplace. So if you Google corporate anthropologist, I should come up on the first 2 pages. Blue Ocean strategy expert up there too. If you want to do culture change, search went up 130,000%, over the last year. But what is it people are looking for? And what are the keywords you want to be found for? And then how do you write content with those in it so you become the authority? And let Google help you match up with people. Think about the buyer's journey. The first or second thing somebody's going to do is Google.
Yeah.
I got introduced to Vistage through a client, and I had no idea what I was doing. So I gave a 3-hour workshop. I got high scores, and they introduced me to someone else who went on ChairNet, who went on somebody else. Is that a way of going? I have no idea. They are very great organization with 25,000 members who are my target audience. And so this year I have 30 of them. I'm very careful to figure out where and how so I can bundle them together. But by and large, it's been a wonderful association for me with them and their members who look to me for certain kinds of things. I've focused, and I recommend focusing.
What do you mean by the word focus? Because I think it's an extremely powerful word. But in the context of somebody who wants to get in front of more of their ideal clients through sources like Vistage or Tech or any association or professional group, when you say focus, what is that? What do you mean specifically there?
Well, what do you want to be known for as the go-to? So I did this at the beginning of Blue Ocean Strategy. I fell in love with it. I became a practitioner. I met Renee Malbon. She reviewed my last book. So I'm a devoted fan of creating markets, not competing in them. And so when I did my first one, I then became the Blue Ocean person. And I will tell you that of the 500 workshops I've done, 75% of them are on Blue Ocean. The others are in culture change or innovation. And I've allowed those to become secondary because the Blue Ocean is rich, particularly now, but it has been for years now. The book was done in 2005. So we're looking at 15 years of thinking about not competing, but creating. And when things were nice, I was entertaining. I had good scores, but a few people were paying a lot of attention. After the 2008 recession, there was a lot of attention. And then as we came out of that, it became a little more entertaining. I like to edutain. And then now it's become almost passionate. People are panicky. I always say, if you want to change, have a crisis or create one. I didn't expect this crisis, but I've allowed the positioning of myself, not as an anthropologist, but as someone who can help companies change. And I use this methodology as an approach. What I loved about it was it's very anthropological. It was not hard to figure out how to co-brand myself. And once I got my practitioner certification, I was easily co-branded. But to my focus point, what do you want to be known for? And how many things can you be known for? With my new book coming out now, I've been doing rethink sessions I just did 2 keynotes. And it's a little different about smashing the myths of women in business. How do you rethink women in your business? And that's some place I'm migrating to because I think I'm more interested in it right now. But I also think that there's a sea change in how women are moving into business and what we can do as a result. And I like the moving into the vacuums that have to be filled, the change. So I'm looking for that as my new focus.
I love that. That's a perfect segue kind of into the next question I want to ask you, which is based on your expertise and experience around anthropology and culture and change. I'm very interested to know your perspective on the differences between and what you've noticed of men and women and how they operate, especially if we could connect that to the world of consulting or running your own business. Any advice, specifically that you might offer to women on things that maybe come up more often? Like maybe we can actually start. Are there any big challenges or areas that you think they feel some resistance around that you've encountered and you feel you have a better path forward that you could offer?
You've asked 3 questions there.
I'm very good at that. So let me break it down. Common mistakes or challenges that you see women entrepreneurs, women consultants making. Let's start with that.
Well, the first thing that I think women consultants should think about is, are they consultants or women consultants? I heard somebody the other day say, I don't want to be your diversity person. I'm a talented leader and I can handle the job. So think about that consultant as a consultant. And if you need to put a qualifier, are you going to put a qualifier around a male consultant? So the first thing that I'm urging organizations and society to stop doing is qualifying this in some fashion, expecting something special or different, better or worse, but not freeing them up from a gender. The same thing with a Black consultant or a Black woman. All of the adjectives or descriptors reflect our culture more than what you're buying. Now, it could be you are buying them because they come with a particular perspective, approach, or other kind of expertise or experience. But I'd rather you buy me as a corporate anthropologist. I didn't say I'm a woman corporate anthropologist. I really like to be successful on my own in that category. Now, what I do know, and I write about often, is women are different than men. And that's good. If you can appreciate the difference, they see things through different lenses often. And those can either be viewed as better or worse because of how you value it, not because of what it is. It's not inherently better or worse. It's what your value system is. And so we find, as I've been working with women leaders, they are thinking team collaboration, empowerment, engagement. I'm not going to say this in most cases. They are less on the competitive control command side. It's a different balance. But when I've worked with men who are CEOs of multi-companies, the command and control comes through. We study culture, and they can't quite figure out why their subsidiaries aren't always performing well. And they are tellers and sellers as opposed to collaborators and engagers. Different styles. The right style at the right time is important, and whether it's a guy or a gal. The other thing that I often find is that women have, like Jane Fisher, who was brought into Citibank, worries me. She has done 3 turnarounds for Citibank. So by hiring her into that role, I wondered whether, I'm an ex-Citibanker, are they ready for a turnaround? Do we put us into that turnaround role? As I studied women who move into healthcare, CEO positions, higher ed CEO positions, I can only tell you how many times they said, well, the guy before me didn't do such a good job, so they brought me in to see if I can fix it and turn it around. I'm working with a couple now. And this kind of weird sexism isn't necessarily healthy for either the organization or for women leaders, consultants, or others. Now, I could also say, you might as well take advantage of it and see how to do it. I have a friend, an attorney, who tells a story about being on the compensation committee of her law firm. She was a partner. And the reviews came through, and the men said they had climbed the Empire State Building to save the damsel in distress and recover the $500 million for the client. The women said that they had worked with so-and-so and so-and-so in a team, and they were able to never have the client lose $500 million, but to save it before it ever happened. Whole different culture and perception of how we go about doing things. Is either better? No. But are they different? Yes. And now the question becomes for you, whether it's your company or whatever, what kind of culture do you want? I have one friend, and she's a chapter in my new book, and Jamie went in to take a company that had been 3 years no growth, and in 9 months had started growing again, and just manages it differently, leads it differently, and is now building one of the most, I'll call, diverse, equitable, integrated, inclusive, belonging cultures. And I did a panel for her. The company's called Admentum. And it was fascinating to listen to the men and the women talk about the transformation going on and how she leads through collaboration. She has her 3 objectives for the year. We focus on what our purpose is, and we all combine and we get done. I mean, it starts at the top, but it goes down and comes up again. So,
yeah, I think it's very powerful because, as you said, it's not necessarily about one thing being better than the other. It's different. And regardless of what your view is or who you are or what you believe, if you're looking to build a business, starting first on getting clear about like what your values are, right? What you want to communicate, but also understanding from a marketing perspective, right? And a content perspective, like really knowing who you're talking to. So one message in terms of priorities, if that's folks for, let's say, a male CEO, it might be a completely different set of priorities for, let's say, a female CEO. Both could be great. They're just different. So understanding that, I think, is a very powerful way to differentiate, because maybe another consultant, your competitor, likely isn't doing that kind of differentiation or isn't being so thoughtful about their content or their marketing. And if you can do that and you can have that focus, as you said, Andy, that is a really powerful way to create more distinction, more differentiation, and to have a message that better resonates with those you truly want to build a relationship with. So I think that's really fantastic. Are there other mindsets or anything else that you found that typically confront women or are more challenging, let's say, for a woman than for a man? Anything else that stands out? Because I know we have a lot of female listeners as well, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this.
When you work inside a company to help them, I'll put it into the context of what I do, to help them change, it is interesting to see which among those that you've got to work with are open and responsive and looking for insights on how to, and those who sit there like this, who are resistors. And we do know that the resistance to change is a human phenomenon. I'm not going to say the guys are more comfortable with the habits they have and more fearful of the unfamiliar than the women, but I often find that to be the case. And then I find the women trying to move the guys along. We become collaborators on how to make the changes comfortable and familiar. Remember, the mind likes the familiar. It likes the story that's in there. It's less about which gender you are than your mind. But I also notice that some are much more open to the unfamiliar and others are much more resistant to them. And I forgive their minds because the minute I go in to change them, they immediately shut down. The cortisol gets flowing through and they say, no, that's not the way we do it. I said, but we have to change. And often they even say, of course we do. And they're not changing anything. So it's an interesting time. One thing I do, and this is half an answer to your question, is that I tell people this is like theater. And their organization is a platform and a stage. And everybody's got a role to play. And so take a look as if you're the audience at who's playing which role and how. Because the metaphor makes it less of a sting, more of an experience. Now, how would you like to change? What do you want the women to be playing? You want them into be stereotype roles or into collaborative roles? You want them to be leaders? What are the guys going to do? How is the conversation to be intelligent so that they can, in fact, hear each other? Where are they going to stand and sit? The cubicles are good and bad. If you are all in cubicles, just watch the dynamics of who hangs out with who. I've had too many meetings where there's a solo woman and nobody talks to her. And she has to figure out how to get engagement when the guys are all sharing their stories or war stories over the weekend about which teams won which games. And did you see the guy who hit the pitch and broke his nose? And the gals are watching the dynamics and trying to figure out Who can I talk to? And so the dynamics of human nature make gender important for us to intentionally understand. And then as a consultant, begin to understand how to work with that organization to help it change. I've not had penalty boxes too often, but I did have one client, a great guy who I knew quite well, who hired me and put me in a closet for 9 months. And finally I said, I quit. And he said, why? I said, because there's nothing you're going to change, are you? He said, well, I hired you. And I said, well, that's the end, not the beginning. And no matter how I swung this way or that, his entirely male staff, and finally he changed, and then everybody else did. But it's a difficult job.
I find that really interesting. I mean, this resonates with me because when we had a business in Japan and I went over and kind of opened up the branch office there, I found myself being the odd person out. I was the one white guy, typically the youngest person in the room, right? Surrounded by much older Japanese businessmen and presidents of companies and so forth. And so that really resonates with me in terms of the conflict or thought process going on in my mind around how do I jump into this conversation, and the dynamics I found to be very interesting. So one more question here, Andi, before we wrap up today. I'm very interested to know, what changes have you made in the structure of your business? I mean, you've been in business for almost 20 years or so, started off as kind of a solo independent consultant. What does a structure look like? I mean, have you at times added a lot more team members, removed team members? Kind of just walk us through like the progression of how the structure of your business has changed over the last 20 years, if at all.
Well, yes and no, it has and hasn't. Because I had run organizations with 2,500 people, I decided early that I didn't want an HR person, that hiring people I didn't think was necessary, that people were hiring me. And how did I then support the job that had to be done? We have a team of outside support, from those who have built websites for my folks, who do social media for my folks, who write content for my clients. And my husband was a serial entrepreneur, and he sold his business in 2017, joined mine, and became a fan of HubSpot and became an inbound marketer. So we're HubSpot partners. So we've added that onto the toolkit. He and I went to Brussels and studied innovation games, mostly because I had met Honeman, who created it, and I was fascinated with how games could free people's minds. And so we went and we spent 4 days in Brussels studying games with a bunch of Europeans who spoke 4 languages, and that was interesting. So we added that into our toolkit. And then I added Blue Ocean Strategy on when I met Renee Wabon. So I've added tools to an anthropologist approach to help companies see things through a fresh lens and then do something. And my last thought is, part of it is understanding what you need, and then part of it is helping them do it. So often I've been with a bunch of hospitals 3 and 4 years to help them implement it. And so we moved from being the consultant to help them strategically understand it and develop the new story to then implementing it. And we've built a good deal of neuroscience tools into this to help them see backwards. And then I became a John Mattone executive coach because I was doing so much executive coaching for my clients. I'm not sure I market that, but I'm not bashful. John Mattone is the best of executive coach, or at least thinks he is. And I love his approach. But those are the kinds of things I added on as my business needed them, and I grew them. But I've been very careful not to employ people.
What I'm hearing from you, Andi, is that you've been very intentional in adding tools to your tool belt as opposed to adding people. So the way to grow has been finding different certifications or programs or an ability that you can provide without having to provide a lot more or build a lot more infrastructure, add a lot more people. And for you, that model has worked really well. Obviously, I would imagine has kept you very kind of lean, profitable, nimble, flexible, a lot of freedom with that model. Is that correct?
That is correct on all of those points by design. I'm also at an interesting stage that I want the freedom to allow me to, before the pandemic, we went away every 3 months. And if not, we thought we could work till the last day of our lives, and we weren't going to do that. You love to travel. We did as well. And so I think we've been to 35 countries. And every 90 days, it was time for us. And so we became quite intentional about living, not just working.
Talk to me about that for a moment. So as the business is running, you're doing well. Every 3 months, you're taking how much time off to travel?
It depends. Sometimes it was a week, sometimes a weekend, sometimes it was 2 weeks. We've been to Africa 3 times. Vietnam was a 2-week tour.
And would you be working at that time as well, or you just kind of completely check out for, let's say, that 1 week period? Because as entrepreneurs, right, sometimes it's hard to check out.
You would be amazed what I got done in Vietnam because of the 12-hour difference. 6 a.m. in the morning and 6 p.m. here. When we were in Normandy, we took care of client stuff. We never missed a beat. And Australia, I mean, I've tried to make it almost irrelevant to where I am because people don't know where I am and they really care.
So the business is operating regardless of where you are. You're, as the term has become more popular these days, like a digital nomad to a degree or at times. And we've certainly taken a very similar approach in traveling with the family. And I love seeing the world and cultures of different people while running a business. So that's fantastic. Andi, I want to thank you so much for coming on here today, sharing with us some of your journey and story. And I want to make sure that people can learn more and go deeper into that. So where's the best place? If there's one website, one address for them to go to, where should they go so they can learn about all of your books and everything else that you have?
I have 2 websites, but the one that really captures our business is SimonAssociates.net, and it is .net. My books and all the other material are on andysimon.com, and they are connected. Those are the best places. The contact place there can get it to us. info@andysimon.com comes right to us. And a lot of the content, the white papers, the videos, and all the rest are on SimonAssociates.net. And our new programs are coming up. We've got 2. One is an online course called Rethink Your Journey with Andy Simon. And the other is a 30-day challenge on time to take care of you. And this all came from my curiosity to how to help people in a new way.
Wonderful. We'll have that stuff linked up. Andi, thank you again so much for coming on.
You're a great interviewer. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.